The galaxy was at peace, or at least it seemed that way. Different species, each with its own strengths and weaknesses, had learned to coexist in an uneasy truce. Governments made deals, traded resources, and kept the peace through diplomacy. But deep within the vast expanse of space, an ancient and feared force had grown restless. The Deathworlders, a race of beings from planets filled with deadly creatures, unpredictable weather, and dangerous environments, had long been a subject of fear and respect. Their homeworlds were inhospitable, forcing them to evolve in ways unimaginable to most other species. To survive, they had become strong, adaptable, and ruthless. For centuries, the galaxy had kept its distance from the Deathworlders. They weren't part of the Galactic Council, and their isolation was viewed as a blessing by the rest of the galaxy. No one dared to cross them. They were the legends whispered about in dark corners of space. The stories about their brutal way of life and their fierce warriors became the stuff of nightmares. But despite this, they had kept their peace, until now. In the heart of the galaxy, the Galactic Council held sway over most of the known species. It was a large body of representatives from various civilizations, each one seeking to keep the balance. However, this peace was fragile, and deep inside the Council's meetings, tensions were rising. The Deathworlders had been growing bolder with their movements, sending strange signals, and making mysterious trips to the outer rim of space. They weren't communicating with anyone, only watching and waiting. One by one, the galaxy's species started to notice. First, it was small incidents, strange disappearances of ships near Deathworlder territories, reports of ships vanishing without a trace. The Council brushed it off as mere coincidence, but then came the intercepted transmission. It was short, just a few words, but it made the hair stand on end for those who heard it. "We're coming." That was all it said. Nothing more. No explanation, no demands. Just those 3 words. The message sent shockwaves through the Galactic Council. A wave of panic swept across the galaxy. Was this a threat? A declaration of war? No one knew for sure, but the one thing everyone could agree on was that the Deathworlders were no longer staying in the shadows. They were moving. A fleet of unknown ships had appeared at the edge of a remote system in the outer rim. These ships were massive, vast, dark, and sleek, moving silently across space like predators stalking their prey. The ships were unlike any others the galaxy had seen before. They were built for battle, with armor that could withstand the most powerful weapons and weapons that could obliterate entire fleets with a single strike. The first strike came without warning. A small outpost on the edge of the galaxy, thought to be safe from the conflicts of the inner systems, was destroyed in an instant. The blast lit up the sky, a bright explosion visible across millions of light years. The Deathworlders had made their move, and they had made it clear that no one was safe. A handful of survivors managed to escape the devastation, but they brought with them terrifying news. The Deathworlders weren't just attacking. They were sending a message. They weren't interested in negotiations or peace talks. They were here for something else. Something bigger. Back on the Council's main planet, the leaders scrambled to put together a plan. There was no precedent for this kind of attack. The Deathworlders were too unpredictable, too powerful. Their ships were faster than anything the galaxy had, their weapons more advanced, and their warriors, well, no one had seen what the Deathworlders could do in combat for generations. While the Galactic Council made plans, the rest of the galaxy waited in fear. Every species, every race, was wondering the same thing. What did the Deathworlders want? And how far were they willing to go to get it? Rumors spread quickly. Some said they were coming to take over the galaxy. Others believed they were simply seeking revenge for some old wound, some forgotten battle from the distant past. But no one truly knew. And that, perhaps, was the scariest part. As the Deathworlders' ships drew closer to the heart of the galaxy, all eyes turned to Earth. Humanity, a species once underestimated by many, had become a powerful force in the galaxy. Though Earth had no interest in becoming the center of galactic politics, the news of the Deathworlders' actions reached them quickly. It didn't take long for the leaders of Earth to realize that the galaxy was facing an unprecedented threat. They knew that they couldn't sit back and watch as the Deathworlders wreaked havoc on the galaxy. But they also knew that they were about to face something unlike anything they had ever seen before. The galaxy was on the edge of a war, and it was only a matter of time before the Deathworlders made their next move. The calm before the storm had passed, and now every species across the galaxy held its breath, waiting for what would come next. The galaxy was in a state of shock. News of the Deathworlders' brutal attack had spread like wildfire, and the fragile peace that had once held the galaxy together was now in jeopardy. The Galactic Council, a body that had brokered peace between species for generations, was now at a crossroads. The Deathworlders had sent a message, a clear and chilling message that no one was ready to interpret. From the depths of space, a loud, almost thunderous voice reverberated across the galaxy. It was a transmission broadcast from the lead ship of the Deathworlder fleet, a massive warship known as the Destroyer of Worlds. The voice was calm, yet filled with an unmistakable coldness, a warning laced with aggression. "We are the Deathworlders. The time for restraint is over." The entire galaxy paused. Those words sent chills through every living being. It was as if the stars themselves had shuddered in response. The voice continued, making it clear that there would be no more negotiations, no more half-hearted peace talks. It was a declaration of war. "We gave you our warning," the voice said. "We are no longer interested in your treaties, your councils, or your peace talks. This galaxy will be ours, whether you accept it or not." The transmission ended, and for a moment, there was only silence. The Galactic Council leaders, already struggling to comprehend the scale of the Deathworlders' power, were now confronted with the reality that this was no idle threat. This was an enemy that didn't care for diplomacy, who believed only in strength and dominance. Panic spread through the systems. Species that had never even considered a true conflict were suddenly faced with the terrifying prospect of being wiped out by an unstoppable force. News outlets across the galaxy replayed the chilling message on repeat. It was a reminder that the Deathworlders were unlike anything the galaxy had ever faced. The first wave of Deathworlder ships had already begun to march through the outer systems, leaving devastation in their wake. Entire colonies had been wiped out without a single shot being fired in retaliation. It was as if the Deathworlders were playing a game of chess, but the pieces were entire planets, and the stakes were higher than anyone had imagined. In every corner of the galaxy, leaders scrambled to form alliances. The once independent species had no choice but to set aside their differences. But the question remained, would these new alliances be enough to stop the Deathworlders, or was this just the beginning of something far more catastrophic? Meanwhile, on Earth, humanity's leaders were watching with growing concern. The message from the Deathworlders had sent a wave of fear through the entire planet. Though humanity had made great strides in technology and military power, they were no match for the Deathworlders' overwhelming might. But Earth's leaders knew something that the rest of the galaxy didn't. Humanity had a secret, a strength that had been hidden for centuries, a power that when unleashed could turn the tide of war. The fleets of Earth's military, previously small in comparison to the colossal Deathworlder armadas, were preparing for action. The once-forgotten ships from humanity's ancient past, the Titan-class supercarriers, were being reactivated and armed with the latest weapons. These ships were legendary. The few who had ever seen them in action told stories of their immense firepower, capable of wiping out entire fleets in moments. Humanity had never before been forced to show its full potential, but now they had no choice. The galaxy was about to learn what it meant to face the wrath of Earth. The galaxy had never seen anything like this. The Deathworlders, who had once been regarded as a threat of unimaginable power, now faced a foe they had underestimated. Humanity's fleet, hidden away for centuries, was now emerging from the depths of space, ready to take on the Deathworlders' might. The stage was set for a conflict that would decide the fate of the galaxy. At the edge of the outer rim, Earth's flagship, the Titan of Sol, stood as a symbol of humanity's determination. It was a massive vessel, far beyond anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Its sleek, armored hull gleamed in the cold light of distant stars, while its weapon systems powered up with a low hum, ready to unleash devastating firepower. The Deathworlders' ships had already entered the war zone. A dozen massive battle cruisers, each bristling with weapons, moved forward with an air of confidence. They had swept through the galaxy, crushing everything in their path. Now they were ready to make their final push. They were sure of victory. No one could challenge them. But they had no idea what was coming. The first clash came with an unexpected shock. The Deathworlder ships moved forward, their cannons blazing, expecting an easy victory. But as they fired upon the nearest targets, they encountered a wall of resistance they hadn't anticipated. A series of explosions erupted as Earth's warships opened fire. Massive beams of energy shot across the space, smashing into the Deathworlder ships with terrifying force. The Titan of Sol unleashed its primary weapons, massive railguns that sent projectiles the size of moons crashing into the enemy fleet. The Deathworlders were taken aback. For the first time in this war, they were on the defensive. Their ships shuddered under the impacts, their armor cracking under the sheer force of humanity's weaponry. It was a fight they hadn't been prepared for. But the Deathworlders were no pushovers. They quickly retaliated, their own weapons firing in a flurry of deadly energy. The space between the two fleets was filled with explosions and the flash of lasers as both sides clashed with a fury that rocked the galaxy. Amid the chaos, the Titan of Sol stood firm, its weapons cutting through the enemy ships with precision. One by one, the Deathworlder cruisers were ripped apart by Earth's firepower. The enemy, once so confident in their superiority, now found themselves facing a force they couldn't understand. The battle raged on, with the Deathworlders beginning to retreat. Their once formidable fleet was now in disarray, its ships scattered and damaged. But even as they withdrew, the Deathworlders vowed that they would not stop until they had destroyed humanity. As the battle continued, the leaders of the galaxy watched in disbelief. The Deathworlders had been stopped, not by their own fleets, but by humanity. The tides of war had shifted in an instant, and the galaxy now understood that the Deathworlders were not the only ones capable of unimaginable destruction. But the real question now was, what would the Deathworlders do next? They had lost the first battle, but they were far from defeated. Their forces were vast, and their thirst for domination was unquenchable. The battle had only just begun. The war zone was no longer just a battlefield. It had become a theater of terror, a place where every decision could tilt the balance of the galaxy. The first battle had been only the beginning, and as the Deathworlders regrouped, humanity knew that the true test was about to begin. From the flagship Titan of Sol, Commander Amelia Price stood before the massive holographic map of the battlefield. She surveyed the damage inflicted on the Deathworlders' forces. Their retreat had been swift, but they weren't gone. They had regrouped, and now their armada was twice as large, brimming with vengeance. "Prepare for the second wave," Commander Price ordered, her voice steady, but her eyes burning with determination. "We've shown them our strength. Now let's remind them why they should fear humanity." The fleet was ready. Every warship was brimming with the latest technology Earth had developed. Massive energy shields, plasma bombs, railgun systems that could turn asteroids to dust. They had the advantage in numbers, but the Deathworlders had speed. They were relentless, and they were coming for Earth. On the other side of the galaxy, the Deathworlders were far from defeated. Their commander, General Xerath, paced through the halls of his flagship, the Oblivion. He had seen the destruction of his fleet, and it filled him with rage. Humanity thought they had won, Xerath growled, his sharp teeth flashing as he clenched his fists. They know nothing of true power. He turned to his officers, who were all standing in a circle, waiting for his orders. "We've underestimated them once. We won't make that mistake again. The next strike will leave no survivors. Prepare for the final push. We will burn their fleet from the sky." The Deathworlders' ships began to power up their engines, and across the galaxy, they set course for Earth. The fight was far from over, but this time, the Deathworlders had a plan. They weren't going to underestimate humanity again. They would attack in full force, unleashing their fury upon Earth's fleet. As Earth's fleet readied itself for the oncoming attack, Commander Price gathered her officers in the war room. They knew the enemy was coming, and this time, they would not have the element of surprise on their side. "We've got one shot at this," Commander Price said, looking over the faces of her crew. "When the Deathworlders arrive, we'll need to hit them with everything we've got. If we fail, they'll wipe us out. We need to stay ahead of them. No mistakes, no second chances." Her crew nodded solemnly. The stakes had never been higher. The time had come. Both fleets were on a collision course, and the tension in the war room was palpable. Every officer on Earth's fleet could feel it. The weight of humanity's survival rested on their shoulders. They were not just fighting for victory anymore. They were fighting for the very future of the galaxy. The galaxy trembled as the two fleets drew closer, their shadows stretching across the stars. The tension was unbearable, and every ship in Earth's fleet braced for the impending clash. On the Titan of Sol, Commander Amelia Price's voice echoed through the war room, her eyes sharp as ever. "Prepare all stations. This is it. The final battle for humanity's future." Her officers scrambled, readying their weapons, tightening up their positions, and locking in on their targets. The time for strategy was over. Now, it was all about survival. On the other side of the galaxy, General Xarath stood aboard the Oblivion, watching the Earth fleet approach. His confidence had only grown with each passing moment. His fleet was ready. He had something Earth had never seen before, a weapon capable of destroying entire fleets in the blink of an eye. "It's time to show them what real power looks like," Xarath said, a cruel smile spreading across his face. He activated a hidden compartment aboard his flagship, revealing a massive energy cannon unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. The cannon hummed with deadly power, its glowing core vibrating with the promise of destruction. As Earth's fleet drew closer, Commander Price watched the Deathworlders ships grow larger on her display screen. But something was off. Their movements were too calculated, too perfect. There was something more than just sheer numbers. There was something different about their tactics this time. "Commander, they're not just here to fight," one of her officers called out. "They're preparing for something. Something big." Price's heart skipped a beat as she looked closer. The Oblivion and its fleet were pulling into position, but the distance was closing too fast. There was no time for a careful maneuver. They were about to be caught in the Deathworlders' trap. "We've got no choice. Engage them now. Full power," Price shouted, her voice filled with urgency. The battle erupted in a blaze of light. Earth's warships opened fire first, plasma blasts streaking toward the Deathworlders' fleet. The Deathworlders retaliated with their advanced weapons. Massive energy beams cut through the void, vaporizing entire squadrons of Earth's ships in seconds. The Titan of Sol shuddered as the shockwaves from the explosions rattled the hull. "We're taking heavy fire," one of Price's officers shouted, his voice trained. "We need to fall back, or we'll be overwhelmed." But Commander Price refused to retreat. "Hold the line," she commanded. "We fight for humanity." The fight was unlike anything Earth had ever witnessed. The Deathworlders' ships moved like phantoms, fast, powerful, and deadly. Their weapons hit with unrelenting force. But Earth's fleet was no slouch. With every ship, they sent volleys of plasma, missiles, and railgun blasts tearing through the Deathworlders' forces. The sky was alive with explosions, each one sending shockwaves that rippled across the stars. But even as Earth's fleet fought valiantly, they were still outnumbered. The Deathworlders' advantage in sheer firepower was staggering. Commander Price knew that if they didn't act fast, Earth would lose everything. "Signal all ships to deploy the new weapon," Price said, her voice a mix of calm and command. "It's our last chance." Deep within Earth's fleet, a new weapon was activated. A massive cannon on the Titan of Sol powered up, its core glowing with brilliant blue energy. This weapon had been humanity's secret, the final hope. The Deathworlders hadn't seen it coming. The Titan of Sol fired, sending a pulse of energy across the battlefield. The blast was so powerful, it sent shockwaves through space, rattling both fleets. But the Deathworlders were ready. General Xaroth activated his own weapon, unleashing the full force of the Oblivion's energy cannon. The two weapons collided in the heart of space, creating an explosion that dwarfed all that had come before. The shockwaves rippled through the galaxy, causing ships to tremble, and leaving both sides reeling from the force of the collision. "This is it," Commander Price muttered, watching the chaos unfold. "We either win or we die here." As the dust settled, both fleets were battered, but neither had surrendered. The Titan of Sol was scared, its shields flickering, but still standing. The Deathworlders' ships were burning, but their flagship Oblivion was still intact. But one thing was certain: Earth's fleet had earned the Deathworlders' respect. They had proven themselves as a force to be reckoned with. The battle hung in the air like an unfinished symphony, each fleet battered and bruised but not yet broken. The galactic battlefield stretched out in front of Commander Price, her eyes glued to the view screen as the Titan of Sol and the Deathworlders' Oblivion exchanged fire. The air was thick with tension, and the crews of both fleets held their breath. Every movement was crucial now. "Commander, we've got multiple hull breaches," one of Price's officers reported urgently. "We're losing power to our main engines." She didn't flinch. Earth's fleet had been fighting like lions, but this was more than a fight for survival now. This was a fight for everything. For humanity's place in the galaxy, for the future of Earth. There was no turning back. "Reroute all remaining power to the shields," Price ordered, her voice steady. "And keep firing. Don't let up." The crew worked furiously, doing everything they could to keep the Titan of Sol in the fight. The massive ship was a symbol of Earth's resilience, but it wasn't invincible. The Deathworlders' ships continued to pour fire into their position, each blast shaking the hull and sending tremors through the entire warship. On the Oblivion, General Xaroth paced back and forth in the command center, his fury evident in every step. The Deathworlders had been certain of victory, certain that their technology, their numbers, and their sheer power would be enough to crush Earth's forces. But now he was staring down an enemy that wouldn't give up, an enemy that was forcing him to rethink everything he believed. "General, we've lost 3 destroyers," a subordinate called out. "The Earth fleet is adapting. They've unlocked something we didn't account for." Xaroth clenched his fists. "What do you mean, adapted?" "They're responding to our attacks faster than expected," the officer said. "Their tactics, they're unpredictable. It's like they're reading our every move." Xaroth's eyes narrowed. He knew that the outcome of this battle would change everything. If Earth's fleet was capable of turning the tide here, the Deathworlders would be forced to retreat, and their dominance over the galaxy would be in serious jeopardy. The general's mind raced, and then a thought struck him. There was only one way to end this: a final, devastating weapon, one that would leave nothing behind. "Prepare the destruction wave," Xaroth commanded. "I want every ship in the fleet to power up the energy conduits. We're going to obliterate them once and for all." The destruction wave was a weapon of unimaginable power. It could annihilate entire fleets with a single devastating pulse. If it worked, Earth would be wiped out in an instant. But if it failed, it would cripple the Deathworlders' forces beyond repair. As the countdown to the destruction wave began, Commander Price stood in front of the control board, her expression hard. She knew what was coming. She had heard rumors about the Deathworlders' ultimate weapon. But Earth's fleet wasn't about to let it happen without a fight. "Lieutenant, signal the fleet," Price said, her voice calm but fierce. "Prepare to counter the destruction wave. We're not letting them take us down without a fight." The officer nodded, his hands trembling as he keyed in the commands. "All ships, lock on to the Oblivion. Prepare for evasive maneuvers and maximum defense." Price's heart pounded in her chest. The next few minutes would decide everything. They could either end this battle once and for all, or Earth would be lost forever. "Ready, Commander," the officer said, his voice tight. "Let's show them what it means to challenge humanity," Price said, her words full of fire. The Earth fleet shifted into position, charging their weapons and preparing for the final strike. The tension was palpable. Both sides were about to unleash their final moves. There was no turning back now. As the countdown on the Oblivion reached its final moments, Surratt's eyes gleamed with cold confidence. He was about to wipe humanity off the map. But just as the destruction wave was about to fire, something unexpected happened. The Titan of Sol, battered and nearly destroyed, was still standing strong. Its shields flickered back to full power, and its weapons surged with energy. "Fire!" Price shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. In that moment, the Titan of Sol unleashed everything it had. The final confrontation had begun. The explosion rocked the battlefield, a massive shockwave that sent tremors through both fleets. It was the destruction wave, unleashed with catastrophic force, but Earth's fleet wasn't going down without a fight. In the midst of the chaos, Commander Price's hand gripped the control panel, her knuckles white. The Titan of Sol was battered, scared from countless strikes. Yet it was still alive, still fighting, still defying the odds. "All ships, brace for impact," Price ordered. Her voice was steady, but every word carried the weight of the galaxy. Evasive maneuvers, full power to the shields. The countdown had ended, and the Deathworlders' final weapon had fired. The massive pulse of energy tore through the space between the fleets, threatening to obliterate everything in its path. But humanity was no stranger to adversity. As the pulse closed in, Earth's fleet's remaining ships used every last drop of their power to create a shield of unparalleled strength. It wasn't enough to stop the destruction wave entirely, but it weakened its power just enough to give them a fighting chance. The shockwave slammed into the fleet's shields, causing them to flicker, then dim. The Titan of Sol rocked violently, alarms blaring across the deck. Price could feel the pressure building, every second a battle for survival. The crew had been pushed to the edge, but they weren't giving up. "Status report," Price demanded, voice sharp. "We're holding, Commander," came the reply. "Shields are holding at 20%, and holding steady. Weapons are online, but the Oblivion is powering up again." Price cursed under her breath. The Deathworlders were far from finished. They had one last push left, and it was going to be a brutal one. "Set coordinates for the Oblivion," Price said, her voice cold as steel. "Prepare to fire everything we have. It's time to end this." The crew worked in perfect sync, every move choreographed with precision. They were outnumbered, outgunned, but they had something the Deathworlders didn't: resolve. The Titan of Sol wasn't just a ship, it was a symbol of Earth's unyielding spirit, and the entire fleet stood behind it. Price's heart raced. The Deathworlders had pushed them to the brink, but they hadn't broken humanity. Not yet, and they never would. With a final surge of power, the Earth fleet's weapons charged up, their cannons glowing with the intensity of 1,000 suns. The Titan of Sol led the charge, its cannons roaring as it fired the first volley, followed by the other ships in the fleet. The battle wasn't over, but the tide had turned. The Oblivion retaliated with a wave of destructive fire, but the Earth fleet's cannons struck true. One by one, the Deathworlder ships began to fall, their shields crumbling under the intensity of the assault. The Oblivion, the Deathworlders' flagship, took the brunt of the attack. Its once imposing form now listed, struggling to stay in orbit as fires raged across its hull. A final volley of human fire shattered its outer defenses, and the once mighty flagship began to break apart. Saroth, the once arrogant general, watched helplessly as his fleet was torn apart by the unrelenting might of Earth's warships. His eyes flickered with disbelief, his hand hovering over the command console. But it was too late. "We've lost," Saroth whispered under his breath. "Retreat. Now." But it was too late for retreat. The Titan of Sol led the final charge, firing one last devastating shot that shattered the Oblivion into pieces. The Deathworlders' once unstoppable force was now scattered across the stars. Humanity had won. The battlefield was eerily quiet as the last echoes of the battle faded. Commander Price stood at the helm, her eyes focused on the wreckage of the Oblivion. The victory was hard-earned, and the cost had been great. But Earth had proven one undeniable truth: no one could challenge humanity and win. "We did it," Price said softly, her voice filled with quiet pride. "Humanity has shown the galaxy what we're capable of." And as the last remnants of the Deathworlder fleet fled into the unknown, the story of Earth's final stand would echo across the stars forever.